So welcome to another of our Confidence Builder sampler squares. This is a series I've put together to help build up confidence in quilting. One of the most often asked questions I get from those new to quilting, get their quilts made, get all the patchwork done, and then it's, well, how do I quilt it? So I'm hoping that through this series that give you some other options other than just quilt in the ditch, though that is included, but other options that you can consider as well. So in block 1 we stitched horizontally and vertically either side of the seams, which gives us a nice pattern to our quilts. It means that everything is secure and it's a lot kinder than stitching in the ditch when you're just starting off and maybe there's little idiosyncrasies where we've not quite got corners matched up. This is a much more forgiving design. So that was block 1. Block 2 we've done a crosshatch, and this one we just went through the corners of our squares, so it was quite a large crosshatch. On our third one, we combined the two patterns together. The lines that you see on here, they need washing out, so that will be done once I've finished putting the quilt together. So here we've done the large crosshatch going through the corners of the squares, and also we've got the stitch on either side of the seam. This one we did the straight lines either side of the seams first and then finished with the crosshatch. So that's just a nice way to combine it all together and gives us extra interest in our quilting. For this block, just done a plain stitch in the ditch, picked a nice block where the corners are matching up so that there isn't too much of it's not going to show up errors so easily. And then we've gone back to crosshatch. This time we've done a smaller one. This I always think is lovely for a traditional, if you're looking for a traditional feel to your quilt. It takes me back to quilts of when I was younger. This one we have done, it's easy to see the pattern on the back. We've divided our quilt block into 4, and we've started with a cross going corner to corner both directions, and then echoed the V quilting in each of the 4 quadrants. So that gives us our centre here, got a centre cross, and then echoed going into the centre of the cross on all 4 corners. So then we come to today's quilt. This one we're going to be going opposing diagonals. So for the very first we're going to do, I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner through the centre. Okay, so what we're going to do, one side we're going to do straight lines going one way, and we're going to do straight lines going the other way, the other side. So let's see, I'm going to make sure if I turn my ruler around that way it'll make it easier to measure. So we're going to line the ruler up 1 inch on that centre line, and I'm going to draw all my quilting lines from this side. They're going to be 1 inch apart. I'm just going to lay the 1 inch line of my ruler on the previous line that I've drawn. I'm going to do that all the way along. So again, I'm marking the lines before adding my pins. So depending on your your fabrics, if you go slightly onto the wadding, you'll have a mark at either end to line up your ruler. Just a few more to go. So this is the last one. So now that side is all done. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to turn this around just so it's easier for me to reach, and I'm going to, this time I'm just going from the centre to the corner. That's going to mark my centre line. Again, I'm going to be drawing the lines 1 inch apart, but this time I'm just going from this line that marks the centre to the edge. We're not going all the way across this time. I'm just making sure I'm lining up 1 inch apart, and on this side you're going to mark the lines in a 2-step operation. It's going from the centre one way, and then we'll go from the centre to the other corner. Make sure that's lined up. Nearly there. There we go. And turn it round. Again, lining up with the centre line. Be kind to your back when you're doing this. Just need to sit down. Make sure, again, it's lined up, and we're just going to this centre line. Right, so a bit of a camera malfunction. So first of all, I did the diagonal lines going this way from the centre to the edge. Then we found the centre mark here and drew lines first going this way, and then going in the other direction 1 inch apart. Now added pins just to keep it in place. These will be removed as we go along, just keeps it all in place. So although I've marked these 1 inch apart, you could always alter that. It's just for these samples, that's the distance I've chosen. So you can see how, even though you're still using your walking foot, you can sort of just add a bit of interest and change things up a bit as you are quilting. So let's take it to the machine. So the machine, it's all set up, got my walking foot on, and what I'm going to do first is to sew across the long diagonal. This will give me my centre point and mark where my quilting is going to go to. Just watch your hands on your pins and take out the ones that you're going to be stitching over. Much easier to take them out as you go. So that's my first line done, and I'm just going to do the long diagonals first. So again, we're starting in the centre and we're going to be radiating outwards. And the idea is, if you keep your eyes ahead at where your line is, it's a lot easier to sew along it than rather than looking at where your needle is. So you're always aiming towards an end point rather than where you're starting. So my stitch length is on 3. If you're using dark fabrics to make your blocks, I use a chalk marker, just makes it easier to see, but for that, because it easily brushes off, you may find that marking and sewing in one direction first and then marking and sewing the other direction next works out better. So even though you're still just sewing in straight lines, you're still adding some interest to your quilt with your quilting. So never underestimate the effect that you can get from quilting with your walking foot. So just a few more to go on this side. while I'm doing this, I'm using my hands to keep my quilt flat so we don't end up with the big tucks. There we go. So now come in from the other side. Again, we're going to start from the middle. Now when it comes to the centre, you can either, what we're going to do, up to that line, and then I'm going to quilt over that line, so you're not going to have lots of lines lots of threads to cut off. You can over stitch on that diagonal line, and then you're going to come back and do the second line. Come up to the next line. And go right up to the centre. I'm just going to these onto the line. Go across to where your next line is. So where I've got the basting spray on my wadding, it's sticking onto the table, so that's why I'm just lifting it up at my fingers at the end. So again, just slow down to the line. Come along to our next mark. Take your pin out. There we go. So I just got to refill my bobbin. Okay, so change my bobbin. Come back and finish my row. So for this one, we're basically doing 2 rows together. Make sure it's lined up properly. just 2 more to go. Go. Go back to where we did our first diagonal, and then we're going to come back and work towards the opposite corner. There we are. So this time I'm coming towards themselves. Don't forget to take your pins out as you go. So by doing it like this, we're just reducing the amount of ends that we need to sew in. When you're doing a full size quilt, just makes it a lot easier. If we can just have the minimum possible number of ends to sew in. Pin out. So when you're getting close to this line, I'm just slowing down because then you can adjust the amount of fabric that is going through, so that you can just, one too many, land on your exactly on your line where you want to stitch. Do remember that when you come to pivoting that you've got your needle down, so you're not going to end up moving it where you don't want it to go. Another way you could do this, if you have a good memory, is that when you're doing these, when you're coming along, you can count the number of stitches, so that you're coming an even number of stitches along. So I've just got one more to do, so I'm going to sew into the line, and then into the corner. Then I don't have anything to sew in on that diagonal. So there we have it, our split diagonals. Let's turn it over, and that's where you can see the difference. So when you're doing that on a big quilt, you can either do that on sections of it, or else you can do it on the whole quilt, depending on the look that you want. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you'll join me very soon for our next in our series of these confidence builder blocks. Look forward to speaking to you soon.